Tacos. I looked at Delaney. Tacos? She nodded seriously. Today is Tuesday. Taco Tuesday. Damn. I glanced at the bag full of dollar bills sitting on the console that served as our swear jar in the truck. The only taco shop nearby is Taco Grand. She sat up straighter. Casa del Taco Grand. Best tacos in Virginia. 3 cheese tacos, chipotle tacos, cilantro lime tacos, beefy bean tacos, cheesy bean tacos. We have to order the big taco set to try them all. 12 amazing tacos. I gritted my teeth as she cheerfully quoted their slogan. Ramon cooks them better at his food truck. And this hellish diner is always full of regulars. They say you can buy dim bags of weed right at the counter. I know they call it the Happy Happy Taco Special, she laughed, smiling widely. Ramon is on the other side of the county, and you owe me $1. For what? You said damn. This is not a curse word. Yes, crap. $3. She lit up cheerfully. I'll throw in $1. Damn doesn't count. Sherry, whom we appointed as a judge for us, decided that we should at least save on food and gasoline. Sherry had no idea what Delaney wanted to do with the money, but she agreed to have a chat with us. Sherry's birthday was 6 months old. Judging by the way we were refilling the jar for swearing, I was beginning to think that Delaney would soon be able to buy her a new car. I could tell by the look on Delaney's face that she had gotten exactly what she wanted. She completed her victory with the annoying sound of the chain tester she was playing with. You drained the batteries. She snorted and made another short noise from the tester before tucking it into her pocket. The idea for the swear jar came to her on her own. I thought she was completely crazy, but every time she swore, she faithfully put a quarter in it. She insisted that for me the bet was $1 because I was an adult. I couldn't argue with her much. In the end, it was partly my fault. I was just talking to a friend named Kurt, who ran his own security and training company in Texas, about setting up Delaney's fireman's extreme driving course in a few years, as I had promised her, and instead he jumped right into it. A mutual teammate of ours, Tony, who worked for him from time to time, was getting married, and he talked Kurt and his wife Katie into babysitting Tony's new stepson while the newlyweds were on their honeymoon. Delaney went to Texas for 3 weeks of what was essentially a shortened bodyguard training course, mostly driving, with a little bit of shooting, first aid, and a couple other things along with a few other girls her age. Kurt based the course on training that was conducted for teenagers in families located in high-risk areas. Sherry and I took advantage of the situation ourselves. It wasn't a real honeymoon, but I took Sherry to Jamaica for a couple of weeks. We got tanned in the most unexpected places. When Delaney stepped off the plane wearing a black t-shirt with a cartoon image of an upside-down burning car with 3 girl figures dancing around it and the logo, Camp Mayhem, "Drive it like you stole it," she literally jumped for joy. It was easy for her to join the team. All that time we spent working on the cars, pushing them around the parking lot and the old quarry site, finally paid off. Probably for the first time in her life, she turned out to be a cool girl who could answer all the questions. When the girls were presented with the cars and asked to inspect them, Delaney immediately checked the tires, opened the hoods, and climbed in to check the fluid levels. She almost broke the record for passing the evasive route set by a professional racer. She also helped me when I worked at the free clinic on Thursdays, so most of the first aid was given to her red-handed. But most importantly, she made real friends. Delaney video called her Camp Mayhem classmates Mackenzie and Tess every Thursday to chat about the sorts of things teenage girls usually talk about. They exchanged letters in which almost all were photographs of cars, cats, and weapons. She even brought home a photograph of the 3 of them sitting on a battered wreck of a car and hung it in her room. She also brought the idea of a can for swearing. Apparently, Kurt and Katie believed that professional bodyguards and drivers should watch their speech, so this tradition appeared at their school. I was pretty impressed that she only had to pay $30 until she admitted that the payment was a quarter for each curse word. It already sounded like her style. When Delaney put out a can of swear words in the truck, She explained that she wanted to buy something for Sherry for her birthday, so I wasn't completely against it. Apparently, this really drained my wallet. Finally, I gave up. We both knew that this would happen because the drive to the Ramonov food truck was still 45 minutes. I drove the rollback into the parking lot and got out, and Delaney jumped off and bounced next to me at the front door. Behind the counter, we were greeted by a guy with acne, with long, sunburned, stray hair under a cap, who for a while tried to understand in bewilderment why anyone would come to the restaurant, then shook his head and began to work. Welcome to Taco Grand, he stammered. I sighed. This is welcome to Taco Grand, and you're about to take our order. Heh, yeah, dude. I rubbed the bridge of my nose. Isn't it too late to be so besotted? Heh, yeah. He smiled and then stopped, trying to remember what we were talking about. Listen, we should take. I glanced at Delaney, who was hoping for my signal. A large set of tacos and 2 large Cokes. He pressed the register for several minutes, seemingly making random presses. I noticed 2 guys in the background chuckling quietly, clearly not sober, like him. Two big sombrero combos, right? God, look. I started, but was interrupted by the loud squeak of the chain tester from Delaney's pocket. I looked at her sharply. She looked up with an air of mock alarm. Your electronic bracelet is starting to beep, she said, looking through the window at the parking lot, then turned to the besotted guy. We better take the order with us. He stared at us both, stunned, for a moment, then spun around and began grabbing handfuls of tacos from the shelf, where they were kept warm, and stuffing them into the bag. He pushed us a bag with 2 large glasses. It will be, $5, Delaney noted. Yeah, $5. Delaney giggled the entire time we headed to the rollback. I watched as she jumped back into the cabin. Did you like it? She rolled her eyes. We were there all day. Besides, she looked into the package. He must have put 30 damn tacos in there. You have to give me a quarter, pretty woman. Crap. Just as we were leaving, a black and gold police car pulled up. Delaney rolled down her window in a panic and began waving furiously at him. Take the large set of tacos, it's just super. Suddenly, she fell back into the cabin, choking with laughter between fits. Look at the back. I saw 3 figures in red, green, and white suits running from the back of the store, running away quickly, the last one with swaying blonde hair that looked comical. We were at the base for almost an hour before Sherry pulled up, who glanced at me succinctly, then shook his head when he saw Delaney lying almost unconscious on top of the right side toolbox on the rollback, with a pile of taco wrappers on her chest. He came out and walked over, glancing at her as she moaned. What's wrong with her? Tacos-induced paralysis. Is it fatal? Usually not. The antidote seems to be a candy bar. Delaney opened one eye slightly, hoping that I would get a real candy bar. HM, he leaned against the truck. Did you notice anything strange at Taco Grand today? How, for example? Anything that would lead me to discover an abandoned, flooded restaurant. Flooded? I looked at him in bewilderment. Water was flowing from the men's toilet. They say someone tried to wash away a kilo of weed. Delaney tried to hold back a laugh, but it still escaped. Sherry looked at her with displeasure. It didn't help, because he knew very well that she had a soft spot for him. I shrugged. This is news for us. You'd think a taco shop would have. A reliable toilet system. What with all those beans? It would probably help if they took it out of plastic bags. Delaney giggled again and rolled over, then let out a squeak from her chain tester. I sighed. The idiot with the blonde hair behind the counter must have thought I had an electronic bracelet on my ankle and that the local police were looking for me. This is a rather specific mistake, she said with a hint of surprise. This is really true, right? Delaney pulled herself up to a sitting position and burped loudly. I didn't want them to get into trouble. Sherry raised the corner of his hat. They won't hit. I could go pick up Mookie at any moment. It's just not worth the effort. Torment, Delaney perked up. Burton Murkowski Jr., or Mookie. He has a small trailer with a secret hemp farm on Highway 19, in a small rural area near the end of the spur behind Cooper Creek. A small-time pot dealer, he likes to think of himself as the Robin Hood of illicit substances. He doesn't cause trouble, he doesn't put crap in his products or sell them to kids, so I just leave him alone. I understood, but Delaney looked at him, puzzled. But if you know what he does and where he grows, I have much more important tasks to devote my resources to than this guy. I was elected here to maintain a peaceful community. If the state or feds want to prosecute him, that's their problem. He's practically harmless. It probably even does something useful. Delaney looked incredulous. She knew my past with illegal substances and that I myself stayed away from them. Sherry caught her glance. Do you know what Friendship Village is? She nodded. Nursing home. It would be better to say a boarding house for pensioners. There are many cancer patients and chronically ill people there. Rumor has it that Mookie truly believes in the healing power of weed and often travels there, accepting nominal payments. I blinked. Is it true? Yes. Let's put it this way. If Mrs. Ramirez offers you a piece of chocolate chip brownie, think twice before you take it. Good to know. So you're not arresting Mookie? Delaney raised a comical eyebrow. No, he's harmless. He'll probably hide in his grow trailer for a couple of days until the D nails his door down, and then just gets back to work. His uncle owns Casa del Taco Grande, so it's hard to fire him. We were still laughing when suddenly a whole column of black subs with police lights turned on drove into the yard. A half-dozen state police officers surrounded the courtyard, weapons drawn, and several civilian officers giving instructions. I carefully raised my hands. I was pretty sure that I hadn't done anything recently that could lead to a shootout. Delaney repeated my gesture, giving me a sidelong glance, which caused me to nod in response. One of the guys in civilian uniform walked right up to me, barely looking at the sheriff. Lester Doss, he asked. It's me. You are being summoned for questioning regarding the attempted murder of Mrs. Charlotte Morris. Damn, I wish I could. I frowned and squeezed my eyes shut for a moment. Damn, you said attempt, didn't you? Damn it. Two of the police officers opened the trailer, and I looked at the sheriff. Do you see the search warrant? Not yet. He looked sharply at the guy who turned to me. Could you please explain what you are doing here and maybe show a modicum of professional courtesy? Special Agent Stein, Virginia State Police. I have a stop and detain order for Lester Doss. I raised an eyebrow at the sheriff. He knew perfectly well where I was. Like every Thursday, I was at the free clinic with a dozen witnesses, including two of his deputies, who brought a homeless man for treatment. I shook my head. I really wanted to know what was going on, what Charlotte was accusing me of this time. Maybe I can take her to court. The sheriff continued, Well, Special Agent Stein, how about you and I go over there and talk a little bit? Or do you want me to call all the county deputies right now, maybe even turn it on CNN? Stein frowned and looked at one of his men. Give me a second. Shackle them. Delaney's eyes narrowed, and she tensed as one of the officers advanced toward her. The sheriff looked between her and me. Wait a minute. Do you also have a stop and detain order for her? No, but... Idiot. It's just a girl. She has no orders. She doesn't seem to have done anything. And you just want to chain her up? She stays with me, and I will call Sherry to pick her up. For a moment, Stein seemed about to do it, and I tensed, gauging the distance to Delaney, who also tensed. I wasn't sure what she was going to do, but I had a feeling that in a few seconds, this whole yard would be in the middle of a real horror. The sheriff stepped between Delaney and the approaching officer, raising his hand as if giving a command over the radio. I'm serious. If he takes another step, I'll issue an emergency call, and it will turn into a three-ring circus. Stein looked at him angrily. You should be helping me, not jeopardizing your job. My job? I'm doing my job. I don't work for the state. I work for the people of this county, and they just wouldn't forgive me if I let some bastard go, especially when it comes to minor offenses. It seemed the agent finally realized that the sheriff was serious as he waved for his officer to come back. Judging by the burning anger in Delaney's eyes, I thought she was lucky, and probably for all of us too. I found myself locked in an interrogation room for several hours. Only occasionally would a deputy drop by to see if I needed anything. At a minimum, everything was monotonous until the sheriff entered the room, stepping heavily, and closed the door behind him. "We have a problem," he said. Before he could add anything, Agent Stein slammed the door open and walked toward me and the sheriff. "Where the hell is that little bitch?" His voice sounded strange, probably because of the limp paper towels with which he wiped his nose. "Who do you mean?" "You know who, Delaney Morris." "I don't know who you're talking about." "The one we detained this morning with you. You know very well who we are talking about." "You mean my daughter, Delaney Doss?" He paused for a moment, assessing me. "Okay, Delaney Doss. No idea. Last time I saw her, some asshole Sid special agent, that is, you was harassing her, and the sheriff said he'd call Sherry to come pick her up. I've been sitting here, chained to a desk, ever since it happened." I looked at him. "I'm guessing, judging by your broken nose, you've talked to her yet." The sheriff put his hand on my shoulder. While I was trying to reach Sherry, this agent apparently decided it was worth questioning her. "Without me or Sherry around. This is damn illegal." "I wanted to ask her who to contact if we couldn't get through to this Sherry guy," Agent Stein said dryly, as if in case someone was recording. He knew that no one in this room would believe this nonsense. "Sherry, and let me guess, you're going to claim that she just attacked you for no reason." He fell silent, and the sheriff stared at him. The recorder was not turned on in this room. Deputy Hyatt let him in, thinking he needed to get his contact information, but insisted that the door to the interrogation room be left open. That's why Deputy Hyatt still has a job. At some point during the interrogation, something went wrong, and this agent suffered a broken nose and missing car keys. I laughed. "Let me guess, is the agent's car now missing?" The sheriff suppressed a smile and said, "We checked the tracker data, and it led us to the landfill, but she wasn't found there. The tracker shows that the car never left the site." Agent Stein frowned. "That little girl must have turned off the tracker. We will find her. We have now sent out a statewide alert." I shook my head slowly. "You really pissed her off, asshole. She had a great day, and you just wanted to ruin everything. If you applied this alert to your car." "This car is government property." His attempt to sound meaningful was somewhat offset by the way his nose sounded after the impact. I looked at the sheriff. "Did you notice that the junkyard smelled like gasoline when you went back to look for his car?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, the smell was very strong just when you mentioned it. I thought maybe she spilled gas trying to fill the car. But she didn't have time to drain the fluid or disassemble the car like she was supposed to. Most likely, we will now be fined." Agent Stone looked confused, but I saw the sheriff begin to understand. The sheriff's face turned red, and he tried not to laugh. He closed his eyes. "Crap." I laughed and looked at the agent. "I hope you didn't leave anything important in your car, Cupcake." Stein began to get angry. "What the hell are you talking about?" "If you look into the car crusher, you bastard." His eyes suddenly widened. "That little bitch." I learned as close to him as the handcuffs would allow. "Call her that again, bastard. Call my daughter a bitch again. More. One. Damn. Once." He started to say something, but then changed his mind, pulling away and leaving the room. The sheriff looked at me. "The judge signed the decision on my transfer, citing the fact that the attack on your wife has some jurisdictional precedent. They also claim they found an illegal drug in your office trailer." Office trailer. Here is finally the good news for my day. Tell Siri to contact Tara and check the internal security cameras. He continued to look back at the door. "I don't like it." "Me too." I thought for a second. I thought it was Charlotte playing games, but now I'm not sure. Can you order his deputies to search me and remove all my clothes and give me a kit? Good idea. This way they won't be able to find anything on you later. I nodded. Delaney will probably run to Sherry, but she's not an idiot. When she sees a policeman or someone she doesn't know, she'll disappear like a shadow. The detention transfer to a larger prison took 4 hours, and once I got there, I was processed by several correctional officers who did their job professionally and thoroughly. I was glad that I wasn't carrying anything with me. One of the large officers looked at my hand. Somalia, Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, damn. What's wrong? Asked an officer with brown hair, looking between me and his colleague. His tattoo, De Oppresso Liber, with stripes for participation in operations. He studied me suspiciously. 5th group. Yes, medic, 13 years in the group, 17 years in SOCOM Special Forces. I served 5 years in the Rangers. You're not going to cause trouble, right? I'm not going to look for them. He understood immediately. Crap. The other officer was still puzzled. What? He's a doctor, right? In special operations, this means that he knows how to stitch you up after he fights you off. He sighed. I'll let anyone who's up to this act know to stay away if you promise you won't do anything stupid yourself. I'll stay away. I just want to be left alone. I arrived just in time for lunch. He sat down alone and ate a very bland beef stew, warm enough not to thicken completely, and a slice of bread. The orange, safe spoon fork probably tasted better. A couple of prisoners at a table not far from me slowly stood up and walked towards me. I could tell from the North Country Wild Boys' tattoos on their necks that the conversation was definitely not going to be boring. The larger NCWB gang member sat across from me, and the smaller one sat next to me. Both had their hands open on the table. I just stared at them. The smaller guy got into a fighting pose. We are not involved. Involved in what? Rumor has it that your head is worth 10,000 for murder. It sounds a bit small, almost insulting. Yes, that's exactly what we thought. We are leaving this case. We wanted everyone to know about it. We told the others to stay away, but some are just stupid. It's clear. He started to stand up, but then hesitated. We were supposed to be in the welding shop that day, but we were shackled 3 days before. You're lucky. Yes, we take this as a sign. We are withdrawing from this matter completely. So I guess I'm not interested in you. He looked down at the table. If someone tries to get those 10, they will be freelancing. Everyone has already been told to stay away, but some people are just stupid. He started to stand up, and I raised my hand. You don't know who Manny was planning to sell the girl to, do you? He shook his head. Manny didn't tell anyone anything. All I know is he was going to take her to Richmond. If you find out, let me know. This will damn sure help me forget about you. They headed back to the table from where they had come. It was Sunday night before anyone dared take a shot at that 10,000. I was dining alone again when my eyes caught a smaller member of the NCWB gang looking meaningfully at a couple of skinny people at another table from a distance. I nodded once. After I set the tray down, I sauntered toward the hallway outside the prison laundry room. This was the only place where there were no cameras, and the lighting left much to be desired. I leaned against the wall and waited until they hurried around the corner after me. I beat up the big guys before they even realized how badly they screwed up. Then I grabbed the smaller one and threw him against the wall. The back of his head bounced off the tiles. The poorly sharpened toothbrush handle fell to the floor with a crash. I pushed him against the wall and said, "The problem with some people is that they have no survival instinct, no sense of self-preservation, you know? I blame the street lighting. All this brightness, and some people just forgot why they should be afraid of the dark." He started to say something, his eyes rolling back in panic, but I slammed my fist into his stomach and threw him to the floor, where he curled up, gasping. I sighed. People with any common sense think, why the hell is everyone staying away from this guy? Because they think there must be a reason. What about you too? No, you don't understand. You have no survival instinct. Do you see? I looked around the corridor. The good news is that I think I can fix this. They say that one truly traumatic experience can completely change your approach to life. He winced as I sadly shook my head and reached for his collar. It's for your own good, is it true? Monday morning turned out to be anticlimactic. Tara arranged for the state attorney general's office and the chief of internal affairs to sit down with her first thing in the morning and watch an interesting video. Agent Stein had seen the exterior cameras, but it never occurred to him that I might have interior cameras built into the walls of the trailer, especially ones that streamed footage to cloud storage that Tara could access without entering the fenced warehouse. I installed cameras when we moved into the cabin, mostly in case some local jerks broke in to steal something. I wish I could say I saw this coming, but honestly, there's no selling. This worked great to catch Agent Stein supplying illegal substances. My appearance before the judge took so long that the state hastily dropped the charges against me and apologized. Tara was stuck at the Internal Affairs office so they could turn over copies of the video to the state agency, maintaining the entire chain of evidence for the future prosecution of Stein. The bright side was that at least I had a ride. The state arranged for a taxi to take me back to the sheriff's department. The sheriff was waiting for me at the station. I nodded to him. Thank you for passing on this information to Tara and Shiri. Let's get this over with. I need to get out there and find Delaney. Yeah, about that, the sheriff said, opening the door marked Patrol Officers Only. Delaney jumped up from her chair. Finally, I looked around. My old sleeping bag was laid out on the cot in one corner of the room, along with the blanket and Delaney pillows I'd brought from home. How long have you been here? She smiled maliciously. About an hour after I broke that bastard's nose. He kept saying that you are not my real father. The sheriff sighed. She came right through the machine room door and hid here. We found her after we transported you. I didn't trust that agent, so we searched the entire state. I couldn't even come to you to tell you. If the blankets are from home, does that mean Shiri knows too? Shiri was already here with Delaney when we found her. Delaney grinned and pointed to the phone on the wall. I called her and told her what was happening. Shiri entered the hall, looking overly smug. Are you guys ready to leave? I have a truck outside. It's taking up extra space, and I don't want to get a ticket. I shook my head and grinned, receiving a kiss from her. The sheriff nodded to Delaney. It will be good if they take you out of here, and take those damn poker cards. I think Deputy Hayat now owes you 20 candies. 23, and she wouldn't think that she could deceive me. She won't forget. The sheriff looked at me. I'll be right back. I need to give you your personal things, and you need to sign them. As soon as he left, Shiri looked at me. Do you think it's because of Delaney? I think so. I started, but the sheriff returned, handing me a stack of forms and a pen and passing my bag to Shiri. I sat down and started filling out the form. Delaney finished packing her things and sat down across the table, looking at me impatiently. So how did it go? Got any cool prison gang tattoos? Did you cut up some idiot for a pack of cigarettes? I only spent 3 days there, and you know I don't smoke, Delaney. I looked at Shiri standing next to me. Don't you think it's too much damn caffeine? I mean, this can't be normal, right? Delaney, almost jumping in her chair, ignored my comment and Shiri's quiet laugh. Come on, something cool was about to happen. The sheriff shook his head slowly. Jesus, you two are weird. Not my prison, not my problem. I would lock you in solitary confinement if you were left here. I'm not a fool. Correctional officers told me that 2 inmates suffered serious injuries consistent with being severely beaten by someone who actually knew what they were doing. And the strange thing is that both prisoners claimed that they tripped and fell down the stairs. Strange? Shiri raised an eyebrow. He nodded. There were no stairs nearby where they were found, and they were not able to crawl, let alone walk. Shiri narrowed her eyes at me, but everything was said half-jokingly. That would make things a lot more difficult, wouldn't it? I shrugged. Delaney grinned. I knew it. The sheriff put his hat on the table. Damn it. I don't know if you're setting a bad example for her or if she's a bad influence on you. Sherry put her hand on my shoulder. He can't handle it at all. He ended up with a couple of stuck-up women. I reached out and squeezed her ass. My favorites. She pushed my shoulder with her hip. Don't forget about it. Delaney wrinkled her nose dramatically. Ugh, find yourself a room. Sherry looked at me thoughtfully as we walked to her truck. I saw a small brown car parked in front of the yard on Saturday and Sunday. There was at least one guy in it who kept hiding when someone drove by. Do you know what kind of car this is? Is Rust a type of car? It was some kind of small two-door hatchback. Old, that is, I'm not sure if it was originally brown or just completely covered in rust. You probably need a tetanus shot to ride it. I didn't want to get too close. I thought you needed to talk to them. Doesn't sound like bandits. Delaney chuckled. Maybe it's that damn bastard cop. They say he lost his car. Yeah, we need to talk about this. I tried to sound serious, but when Delaney looked at me with her puppy dog eyes, I couldn't help but start giggling. It didn't help that Sherry immediately burst into laughter. I tried to regain the initiative. You owe me a quarter. I had to suspend your swear jar system. When I got to Delaney at the station, she told me what had happened, and since she would have to pay her entire salary for the next 20 years if she insisted, I put it on hold. Just until the end of this matter, whatever it is. Delaney looked at her warmly. A few hours later, Tiffany and Tara met us at the cabin. You need to be careful. Stein received a tip and disappeared. I haven't been given any details, but they seem to think he's leaving the country. Tara slowly shook her head. I'm not sure I believe it. Stop and hold was not valid for you. It was supposedly signed by Judge Knowlton, but he says he never issued it and claims someone somehow hacked the system. His clerks all support him, but this system is not connected to the internet anywhere. It's almost impossible to hack. I thought for a moment, but Sherry beat me to it with a question. How old is Stein as an agent? Tara looked thoughtfully. 18 years old. It's too much to risk losing everything. I sat down a little. Judge and special agent. I remembered the 10,000 that had been placed on my head. And someone else. That's a lot of influence. Tara looked at Tiffany for a moment. This may actually be related to the shooting of Mama. She turned to me. She was shot 4 times in the back with a 9mm pistol, and her office was ransacked. Sherry frowned, obviously for Tara and Tiffany's sake. Will she be okay? Tiffany replied, She's not quite out of trouble yet. We have to worry about secondary infections, but the surgeries were a success, and she's holding up quite well. Damn it. They probably didn't know they needed to use silver bullets. Or garlic. Or silver bullets with garlic. Maybe a wooden stake. That's enough, less. Sherry turned so that only I could see her face and winked at me, while maintaining a serious tone. I would have warned them if they had asked. I sagged in my chair and stared at the ceiling, catching my breath. Did she even say what the hell was going on? Tiffany perverted her lips. She says she's too weak to talk about it and doesn't remember anything at all. Nonsense. Tara nodded, agreeing with my assessment. She's hiding something. I looked around the office after the police left, but didn't find anything. I can't open the safe, and Mom says she doesn't remember the combination. Delaney, lying on the windowsill and drawing patterns on the glass, suddenly said, Unless she changed it after I left, I can open it. I can't tell you the number, but I know the pattern of the combination. I thought she changed it after you opened it to take Daddy's gun, Tara asked, looking Delaney over. I cheated, yes, but they ignored me so hard all this time that they forgot that I even existed. It was like being invisible. I thought about taking the money from the safe and leaving, but the escape didn't go so well the first time. I needed to go where they were waiting for me. She settled down on the windowsill. Tiffany laughed quietly. God, how she hated it. She tries to hide it, but it still torments her daily. She would be better off if you joined the Manson family or some cult. A look of anger and sadness flashed across Sherry's face. Lord, Delaney won't end up with a family that loves her, will he? Yes, I know. Tiffany looked down. I don't understand why she's like this. When we were little, I know she really cared. Maybe it's all about the money. She looked hopeless. I don't know. Delaney sat up, her face suddenly tense. I don't care. I know where I belong. I'll never go back. She hissed angrily. Tara carefully extended her hand. We know. And you're right. Even if something happens to Dad, Sherry received custody. I did the paperwork and got Mom to agree to it. She looked at Sherry. I hope you don't mind, but I don't trust Mom anymore. You and Dad will just have to sign them. Sherry shines. We'll never have to use it, but of course I don't mind. She belongs here. Delaney seemed like she was having trouble breathing, but eventually she quietly broke into a crooked smile. I nodded. There could be problems if Charlotte challenges this. She takes a bunch of painkillers. If she does this, the whole truth about Charles will come out. I'll keep an eye on this. She knows about this. Tara's face showed anger. The next morning, we met Tara outside Charlotte's insanely huge McMansion. Delaney and I caught a glimpse of the car Sherry was talking about when she dropped us off at the yard to pick up my Mustang. It turned out that the little brown car was a 1973 Ford Pinto, and it was almost impossible to believe that it was even driving. There were rusty piles of metal in our yard that looked to be in better condition. We never got around to finding it because we promised to meet Tiffany and Tara at Charlotte's, but we knew what to look for. Tara greeted us with a wide smile. Mom would be furious if she found out you were here. I walked inside, past her. You'd think she'd want people to find out who the hell stabbed her in the back. She would rather die than let you help her dad. Believe me, I'm not trying to help her. I'm just trying to protect Delaney. Delaney walked straight into the office and pulled back the panel covering the wall safe. I looked around, trying not to smile, remembering the last time I was in this office. That was the day Senator Charles Morris decided to take a bullet in the stomach rather than go to jail for trying to kill his own daughter, even though he didn't see it that way. It made the world a little better, a little cleaner. Delaney opened the safe with ease and turned to us with a smug smile. Tara came closer. 3 flash drives and a pile of documents. I started going through documents while she turned on the laptop and tried to access the flash drives. Accounts, a couple of late notices, accounting book for C&M Consulting. I began to sort through the papers more carefully. Apparently, Chuck's death shook her greatly. All late notices are dated immediately thereafter. God, so much money. What the hell does this pool service company do? I was going to make a joke about the pool guy, but I stopped when I noticed Delaney was listening intently. Tara raised one eyebrow, but continued to work intently. The flash drives are encrypted. You'll have to get the password from your mom. Have there been any recent overdue bills? Looks like everything is fine. Damn, this woman spends so much on spa treatments. Yes, I remember she said that a senator's wife should look the part. Look like? Queen of the high empire of some kind? Delaney laughed, but continued to study the office. Tara sat down and closed her laptop. People have different priorities. Charlotte's priority is always Charlotte herself. Tara nodded. Yes, it has been like that, at least since she met Charles. This is, damn it, the same Pinto that is following us. Delaney continued to look forward, only occasionally glancing back in the mirror. The lessons learned at Camp Chaos had become ingrained in her blood. You think it's that bastard Stein? I don't know a damn thing, but I'm done with this whining and waiting for someone else to do something. We'll find out who it is. He's too far behind. When I turn the corner, you move and roll back half a block, stop, and turn on your hazard lights. She unbuckled her seatbelt and prepared herself. She was going to slide across the seat and take my place. I waited until we were exactly level with the big tree and opened the door. We have acted this way more than once, picking up ruins. I jumped out of the car, and Delaney, half standing, moved and sat behind the wheel. She could barely reach the pedals, but she still drove better than most men. I stood behind a tree, pulled out my 1911, and waited for Delaney to make a precise half-block U-turn, stop, and turn on his hazard lights. For a moment, I thought the Pinto had stalled, but it came closer with a terrible growl and stopped about 50 yards from the truck. As I approached, I saw the back of the driver's head, who was nervously looking ahead. I tapped the car window with the back of the gun. I expected a bit of shock, a hasty apology, or stuttering excuses. Almost everything except what happened. My ears almost exploded from his piercing screech, and without warning, the car suddenly pulled back. I barely had time to jump away to avoid being crushed by the mirror. The Pinto bounced off the curb, went back into the ditch, and flipped over on its side, the wheels spinning. I just stood there looking at it for a while until Delaney ran up to me to look inside. "Damn it, what did you do?" I knocked on the window. She tilted her head to the side and looked worriedly at the driver, who was frantically trying to unbuckle his seat belt. Torment. Mookie sat between us, nervously looking over his shoulder at the Pinto parked behind the truck. I examined him carefully. "What the hell is going on, Mookie? Why are you following us?" That is, I didn't follow. Delaney punched him on the shoulder with a skinny but determined hand. "Stop lying. It was a hard week. He might just shoot you, but I swear if you don't answer, I'll fucking punch you between the legs." She pulled a screwdriver out of the glove compartment and waved it in front of his face. He looked at me, and then, receiving no support, he sank down, folding his arms over his chest, protecting his groin with one hand, all the while looking over at Delaney. "I'm just trying to get my property back." "What property?" He fell silent until Delaney brandished the screwdriver. "Seeds. I accidentally gave you 1/2 pound of excellent seeds. Did you give it away? I mixed up the bags, put the taco in one of them, and gave it to you." These seeds were sealed at the bottom. I stored them in the refrigerator at work and planned to take them home. I shook my head. "You'll have to buy new seeds somewhere, idiot. We threw that bag away a week ago. We don't store bags of fast food in the truck." He looked depressed. "Where?" "Look, they're probably already in the landfill, wherever the garbage truck unloads garbage." For a moment, I thought he was about to cry. "I won't be able to buy new ones. You can't buy it at all." These were not just any seeds, these were G13 seeds. Delaney sighed theatrically. "Anyway, this stuff is bad for you. I've been smoking since an early age, and it hasn't harmed me one bit." Delaney stared at him incredulously. "God, do you really think you're normal?" To prevent Delaney from going down this fruitless path, I asked a question that I immediately regretted. "What the hell is G13? It's like the best shit ever. The CIA developed it. This is pure magic. A lot of people sell some crap calling it G13, but it was real. My cousin worked in a lab at the University of Mississippi, and she pulled it out. I brought new items into my trailer, even installed a new door. I wanted to protect him. Let her find more. She died, dude. They say it was an accident, but I don't know. CIA, you know?" Delaney rolled her eyes. "Paranoid, huh?" He glanced at her. "You don't understand. This crap cures cancer. She really heals," I heard someone say to Janice. "That's why Janice gave me some seeds." A couple of suits came up and asked if Janice had sent me anything, saying there was a reward for it. I said I didn't receive anything. "So you can save humanity?" I grinned. I was going to grow them, give them away as seeds. This is the right thing to do. These suits only care about making money. We pulled into the Taco Grand parking lot, and I turned off the truck's engine. "I can't help you unless you want to dig through thousands of acres in one of those landfills." Delaney opened the door, suddenly stopped, and looked at me through her torment. "What if we still have a bag left?" I shrugged. "He might have it. I don't want to have anything to do with this." She frowned, mumbling thoughtfully. "I think We might still have it. What? I saved the last 2 tacos for Mrs. Edwards' Basset Hound. You hate Mrs. Edwards. Yeah, I saved 2 tacos with cheesy bean sauce. I wondered how tacos with cheesy bean sauce would affect the digestive system of an aging Basset Hound. You really hate Mrs. Edwards. She nodded and quickly got out of the car and opened the right-hand tool drawer, pulling out a worn-out bag. Mice got into the taco. That's why we don't store food in fucking trucks, Delaney. She tore at the bag until she found a neatly folded plastic bag taped to the bottom of the bag. The mice ate a little of his corner, she pointed to the chewed corner. Mookie stared at the package in amazement. Here he is, look, he has a University of Mississippi sticker on him. I looked at it, and it was just standard lab data, and in big letters on the corner, it said, Strain G13. The university logo was missing, replaced by Hackman Pharmaceuticals, neatly written across the top. Delaney studied it carefully, trying to decipher the letters. She looked at me with confusion, and I shrugged. Large companies often provide grants to universities. It's cheaper than doing everything yourself. An agricultural project like this requires space, and the university may be able to get permits to grow what the companies couldn't. Strange. I took the Pinto off the rollback. Apart from the broken taillight, it will apparently pass without any problems. Delaney watched with interest as he reverently sealed the corner portion of his prized cargo with electrical wiring from the toolkit. Finally, as he headed toward work, there was something like a slight bounce in his step. Or maybe he just needed to go to the bathroom. Delaney watched him with a grin, and I looked at her warily. No. No, what? Simply no. We can't leave him. Our own dealer of illegal substances. God, no. He doesn't look like Scarface. Even a water pistol would have hurt him. She giggled as we watched him walk up to the front door, which finally opened after his unsuccessful attempts to push it. We stood in front of a single-aisle house that had just been delivered to the site. This was the last item we pulled from the abandoned site that the county paid us to clean up. 6 vehicles, 4 refrigerators, and a boiler that someone dumped there. Before this, the mobile home was abandoned several years ago. He turned out to be in better condition than I expected. What are we going to do about it? Delaney asked, looking around the trailer. We'll sell it. It's 30 years old, but if we deliver it, someone will probably want it. It's not in bad shape and would make a decent little home for someone. We don't need to overcharge, we got it for free, so any price will be a profit. It's pretty cool, Delaney said. Although she had a different idea of what a great home was, she apparently liked the idea of a small home for those who couldn't afford anything larger. We walked into the office and Delaney picked up her helmet, putting it on. Would you like a hot dog with jalapeno? Maybe a hamburger this time. We need to diversify. I'll go there in a couple of minutes. I just have to finish the quarterly report, I said, sitting down at the small desk in the office and painfully counting the numbers. She fastened the helmet strap. I'm going down the alley behind the sheriff's station. Stein could still be around somewhere. I agree with Tara on this one. He must have had a good reason for what he did. She nodded. I'm not going to take any risks. Less than 20 minutes later, I was at the sheriff's station, watching Sherry calm Delaney, who was alternately terrified and filled with rage. That bastard destroyed my moped, she said, repeating it several times. Everything happened so quickly that her adrenaline had already begun to subside, and the tears in her eyes were more from rage than from fear. The sheriff came in and sat down at his desk. We have already found the F-150. It was stolen in Richmond last night, and one of my guys found it abandoned a few miles away. I have people in place, but... He raised his hands in refusal. Delaney took a deep breath, pressing her lips together, and let out a long exhale. The driver was a big, muscular guy. It wasn't Stein. He was waiting in the parking lot of an auto parts store. It's just... She slapped her hands, like that. I have a videotape, the sheriff said, showing it, and we walked over to look over his shoulder. We watched the grainy video. Delaney was riding her scooter along the fence, and then a truck appeared on the screen, racing at full speed, grabbed the scooter, and, dragging it along the fence, stretched it for several meters. He stared intently at the screen. It wasn't an accident, and it looks like the truck sat here for at least an hour and a half, waiting in the wings. Sherry, holding Delaney close, asked, "How did you even?" The sheriff rewound the footage, played it slowly, and we saw Delaney free himself from the weight of his scooter, roll under the front bumper of the truck, let it pass over him, and then throw himself under a damaged fence, running toward the camera. Delaney trembled. "I don't even remember how I did it," she said with a weak smile, looking at me. "At least I didn't wet myself." Then she paused and added, "I need to go to the bathroom." Sherry led her along, not wanting to let her go even for a second. I looked at the sheriff silently. He frowned. "Damn. Understand. Do what you have to do, but try not to bring it to my house. Do you have any idea what's going on here?" "No damn idea what started it, but apparently it all has to do with Delaney." Sherry, with pursed lips and a stern expression, led Delaney back to the office. "Les, I think you need to call Tiffany and tell her you need to talk to your ex-wife. This all started at the same time she was shot." I didn't object. We walked into a room where a couple of nurses were checking the heart monitor and oxygen sensor connected to Charlotte via tubes and wires. Charlotte inhaled slowly and looked calmly at Sherry. "I don't want her here." I shrugged. "I want one thing, another thing is poop, so choose what will fill you up faster." I noticed Sherry gave me a slightly sarcastic look, but there was a hint of a smile in it. "What is she even doing here?" asked Charlotte. Sherry responded with an obviously fake smile. "I'm here to stop Les from giving in to his basest instincts. Like, so he doesn't try to smother you with a pillow." Charlotte looked at me. "I don't like having her around. You know, she used to be a stripper." She said this with some arrogance, as if she expected to shock me with this fact. I turned to Sherry. "Dancer, is it true?" Sherry shrugged. "I don't know about dancer. I grew up about 50 miles from here." She scrunched up her face a little. "True, I didn't really dance, but no one cared while I was kicking out the girls." I nodded silently. "Yes, I understand." Charlotte, noticing that I already knew everything, stared at me intently with disgust. "Dancers are girls of easy virtue. Everyone knows." Sherry leaned forward with a saccharine smile. "You should probably shut up for a while." "And what?" Charlotte rolled her eyes. "Nothing, honey. I'm just trying to help." "Is it true?" "You see, I danced to get rid of a fine from the court. I got into trouble when I crashed the cheater's truck. She spent 3 months in county custody and then also paid a $3,000 fine, and the truck was completely new." Charlotte's face darkened as she realized Sherry wasn't hiding anything. Sherry noticed this, but continued. "It was a lot of money, and the judge does not like jokes when the fine is not paid. I had to do something. But that's not the most important thing for you." Charlotte's impatience grew. "So what is important to me?" "You see, I worked there to pay off a fine, and most of the girls worked there to pay for their education." She paused, and I noticed the sparkle in her eyes that usually appeared when she won at poker with a straight flush. Mostly female nursing students. Charlotte took in this information for a moment and then looked at the 2 nurses who continued to work. The head nurse frowned and looked at her coldly, while the red-haired younger one openly glared at her. "Yeah." The head nurse straightened out. "We'll just give you some privacy." She nodded towards Charlotte. "I am the charge nurse of the day shift. You can call me Jasmine." She then reached out and touched Sherry's shoulder and said, "It's good to see you again, Candy. Don't forget to say hello when you leave." I waited until the door closed. "You put an investigator on us. Not the smartest decision to have a private investigator in my circle, considering everything Charles was involved with. I could throw you in jail by mistake." Charlotte sighed in annoyance. "I ran a computer check on you and her. Did it after Delaney. Decided to live with you before Charles died unexpectedly. I just wanted to make sure she was okay. Didn't expect you to kill half of North Carolina." I didn't answer that, especially in a room full of electronic equipment. I changed the subject. "So what the hell is going on? Someone's shooting you. I'm being arrested by corrupt cops on a bogus warrant who seem to be madly interested in Delaney. The judge is affiliated with Chucky's former law firm. Maybe I unintentionally triggered something." She shifted in embarrassment. "Maybe I... Charles wasn't Delaney's father." I felt a sense of foreboding. "So who was he?" "I'm afraid I don't know for sure." "My God, Charlotte, what have you done? Is it one or two guys with unclear timing? Or are we talking about half the Virginia bar and someone apparently missing their backside?" She sat up straight. "You have to understand, the election campaign almost bankrupted us. We spent huge amounts of money and even borrowed money. Charlotte, I may have let a few men know that I would appreciate help in supporting their daughter." She said it quickly, as if hoping that I wouldn't guess. Charlotte never even thought of offering a penny to help Delaney. Although, to be honest, I wouldn't accept it. We stared at each other in silence. Crap. Were you blackmailing lawyers and judges? I wasn't blackmailing. I was just looking for a little help to restore my financial situation. I need to maintain a certain standard of living. These financial statements from CM Consulting are what they are, aren't they? Your little game could cost Delaney's life. A barely noticeable shadow of guilt flashed across her face. I didn't think anyone would be so aggressive. These are respected people, and I was careful not to ask for too much. "Dear, how's Chuck? That bastard tried to have Delaney killed for votes and planned to expose Tara to the firm, just like he did to you." She wrinkled her nose, and I hoped there was a recording device somewhere so she could listen to it again later. "It's not, by the way now. Okay, let's talk about what's really important. Let's forget how many men you slept with to help Chuck. Let's narrow it down to a couple of people who could influence Judge Knowlton. Knowlton issued a warrant against me." "I thought you said the warrant was bad." "He claims he did not sign it, and that one of the judge's clerks apparently forged it. Nobody can prove anything, but I don't believe it." She thought, "Probably only senior partners. Not Burns, he's gay. So Sharpton, Franks, and Calloway." "Calloway?" "Father and son. Both are partners." "So who?" I fell silent as she frowned at me. "Crap. Both, right?" She nodded. Sherry sighed. "Oh, honey, just tell me it didn't happen at the same time." "Of course not." Charlotte turned to me, moving away from Sherry. Behind her, I saw Sherry purr the word prostitute and roll her eyes. The elder Calloway couldn't be her father because it only happened once. He had prostate surgery shortly after that. We left as soon as we could, Sherry dragging me along. I suspect she noticed me eyeing the extra pillow. I had just finished moving the battery box and almost tripped over Delaney. "I wonder what's the matter," Delaney said, moving an old tire to a stack of tires. If it had been any other teenager, she would have used this as an excuse to stop. But Delaney worked so hard to get back to her car as quickly as possible. Her painstaking work in rebuilding the engine was almost mesmerizing to her. I followed her gaze. A black SUV was parked next to the closed gate, and a county sheriff's car was parked behind it. The deputy, likely a Hyatt due to his short stature, spoke with the driver, but did not have an issued ticket book. He handed her something, and she moved to the back of the car and looked at it. The exchange didn't look very pleasant, and we watched until the SUV drove away. The deputy turned as if he was going back to his car, but saw us and walked towards us. I waved for her to come through the smaller gate on the sidewalk, and we met there. She threw Delaney a smile, but turned to me and became serious. "Sir, how can I help?" "I have reason to believe that the man in the black SUV was taking photographs of Delaney, but the memory card was removed from the camera, so I have no evidence. With everything that's happened, I thought you should know." "Hell, even if you had proof, there wouldn't be much you could do about it." He had a gun. He is licensed as a security guard. And with everything going on, I thought you should know. Do you have any idea who he works for? He didn't look like any normal security guard I'd ever met. He had everything on, a hoodie and wide pants, and I got the feeling that he had a lot of run-ins with the police under his belt. The license pointed to the company Gold Shield Security. I've never heard of her, but the check confirmed the data. Did you recognize his name? John Ellis. I checked, and he has no criminal record or wanted record, but he has a number of minor charges of battery and assault. Delaney glared at the deputy. Did you see him taking pictures of me? Hyatt shook her head. No, but the lack of a memory card is pretty good evidence. There was nothing on which suspicion could be based that would give rise to probable cause. Burton Murkowski reported. He was passing by, delivering tacos in Friendship Village. They seemed to love tacos there. He thought the guy was some kind of pervert. Torment? Delaney asked with a half-smile. Delivery tacos in Friendship Village? Hyatt smiled and shook her head. Torment. God, he's just an idiot, but his actions are usually motivated by good intentions. Plus, they love tacos there. It was clear from her facial expression that she understood very well why this was happening. After a moment, she added, If Mrs. Ramirez offers you a raisin muffin, you better refuse. Well, we already know. It's good that he himself reported this, and thanks for scaring off that henchman. She nodded. Be careful, I have a feeling about this guy. Delaney smiled. How about a few more games of poker? Hyatt shook her head with a laugh. No way, I don't think you're playing fair. Fair is a place that sells corn dogs and funnel cakes. Delaney paused. Oh, funnel cakes. I could tell by the look in her eyes that Delaney was thinking the same thing as me. Perhaps Mookie knew something else. He was afraid of the police. He was probably afraid of us too, but it worked in our favor. I think we should stop by Mookie's to thank him for calling. What do you think? Delaney nodded. Maybe he saw something else. When Mookie finished his shift at Taco Grand, we decided to stop by his trailer. He was somewhere on the way home, and Sherry was already delayed. We pulled Sally, a modeled Mustang Cobra, out of Sherry's garage in case we wanted to go for a spin. It had been a long time, and I wanted to shoo Sally away a bit. Finding the turnoff that led to the trailer wasn't hard. I was pretty sure I'd hauled a couple of abandoned cars to the county office about 6 years ago, before Mookie could set up his grow site. A black car sped past us as we turned a long, winding stretch of forest road. The viewing angle was not ideal, but I saw two men in it. Their T-shirts had Tactical 501 inches written on them. They were clearly professional security guards, not at all like the guy in the hoodie and wide pants. I could only make out a hint of the driver's face, but his obvious irritation indicated that we might be facing a problem. This became even clearer a split second later when we broke into a small clearing and saw flickering flames at the end of Mookie's trailer. He's there. Delaney pointed to Mookie's colorful Pinto, parked a couple of yards from the trailer. I pressed the Sally pedal to the floor and stopped to the side of the trailer so that it would not be hit by the fire, jumped out and rushed to the front door. I pulled it and it was locked. The same special door that Mookie had installed to prevent thieves from getting to his plantation could now kill him. I turned around, preparing to run back after Sally, but Delaney was already handing me a crowbar from her trunk with a satisfied grin. I drove the edge of the crowbar between the frame and the door right next to the lock and leaned on it with all my might until the door gave way. Mookie had built a damn good door, of course, but it was still built into the skin of a trailer that was 30 years old and built on the cheap. The blast of heat from the flames consuming the far end of the trailer knocked me off my feet, but I gritted my teeth and climbed inside. Everything there was boiling with black smoke. I fell to my knees in the strip of air that remained near the floor and crawled until Mookie's bony ass was right in front of my face. That is, his bare butt was literally a foot from my nose. I grabbed his belt and began to pull him back, fumbling around for the doorway until a hand grabbed my ankle and pulled. Delaney, leaning halfway out of the doorway, helped me pull him out. We tumbled head over heels down the rickety aluminum steps. Is he alive? Delaney, who had tears streaming down her cheeks from the smoke, began shaking Mookie, trying to bring him to his senses. I sat up and reached out to him. He just coughed weakly. Thank God. Delaney smiled wryly. I told you that you like him. How can you not like a dude nicknamed Mookie? Not a damn thing like that. I was just afraid that I would have to pump it out. It would be like giving CPR to a freaking bong, and you'd wake up somewhere in Cleveland, barefoot, shirtless, and with 24 cents of dented pennies in your pocket. And what does the sheriff usually say? Is that a strangely specific description? Delaney grinned as we sat Mookie down. Half of his hair was curled from the heat. He was lucky it didn't catch fire. Terrible bruises began to appear on the left side of his face. Delaney turned sharply and looked down the road. Looks like they're coming back. I listened and made out the growing sound of the Audi engine. It looks like they drove onto the main road and then decided to return to finish the job and remove witnesses. Damn, I looked around, and then from there came the howl of a siren. Then there was a series of pistol pops. I met Delaney's gaze. We need to drag him behind Sally. Now the circus will start here. We barely made it to the back of the Mustang when an Audi came around the corner, darted toward the Pinto, and slammed on the brakes. Before he finally stopped, a police car also rushed to the spot, blocking the road to one side. Two men in suits jumped out of the Audi almost simultaneously and opened fire, apparently from Glocks, at the patrolman. A second later, return shots fired from the cruiser's bumper. To hell with this, I cursed, stepping forward past Delaney and Mookie and snatching my Colt .45 caliber from under the torpedo. Sit down, don't stick your head out. Delaney crouched to the ground, looking out from under the truck. Not what I wanted, but there's no time to argue. I walked forward until I had a direct line of fire on both shooters. Blinded by the light of the blazing trailer, they did not see me. I hoped the deputy would realize I was in it and not shoot me. The driver turned sharply as my first two shots from the 1911 hit him in the chest. The second shooter, aiming at the assistant, hesitated, and the next deuce also went to him. The first shot was in the center. The second pierced the collarbone and went into the neck. Both bastards didn't get up. Hoping that the policeman could see me, I raised the pistol, removed the magazine, and pulled the bolt back, knocking the cartridge out of the barrel. Clean. Ahead, near the front wheel of the car, something knocked weakly on the ground. Damn! I rushed to the fallen assistant, tucking the pistol into my belt. Deputy Hyatt, all 4 feet 10 inches of her height, looked down at me, breathing heavily. Twice. Hit. The knee. And... She shuddered sharply. The hand. Delaney? A bag. Alive. She seemed to be already rushing towards me. She plopped down on her knees next to me and handed me the first aid kit. Hold it. I'm for Sally. We need to call. Delaney squeezed my shoulder. I don't think we have time. Remember how you said that most cars don't explode? The way she said most, it immediately became clear to me what was going on. Pinto. It's burning. Shit. Because of the way the cars were parked, this whole clearing soon turned into a fiery inferno. Most likely, the Pinto would not have exploded with a roar, but in such a small space, the difference is small. I heard the Sally start up as I fumbled to remove Hyatt's body armor to assess her injuries. She was losing blood, but not critically, at least something encouraging. I looked at the knee. There was enough blood. Apparently both bones in the shin were broken just below the joint. It hurt like hell, but she could hold out. Delaney pulled up suddenly at my side, reclined the passenger seat as far as possible, and unfolded it so that I could haul the Hyatt up. When I slammed the door, she howled, hitting her wounded leg. As Sally sped past the police car, I heard a crunch, but it was immediately drowned out by the explosion of the Pinto's gas tank, and the entire clearing was lit up in flames. I'm sorry. God, I'm sorry. Delaney looked terribly guilty. Yes, everything is fine. We got out. I hastily applied a pressure bandage to her arm, then took out a splint and began to fix the knee. I hit the mirror. There was little space, and it was just. I couldn't help myself and laughed. Let's buy a new mirror, nothing. Better a mirror than third-degree burns. She slowed down. Maybe I should stop. Drive further, there's another propane tank near the trailer. I was still working in bandages and splints when, about a mile later, I saw flames shoot up behind me. The sheriff will have to hope his car insurance policy is in order. Delaney suddenly slowed down and began flashing her headlights. We'll have to drive quietly. They look unhappy for some reason. All available sheriff's deputies were crowded at the checkpoint, guns drawn. Delaney turned off Sally and walked out with her hands up. We have a wounded woman, Deputy Hyatt. Needles tries to help her. He comes out. I carefully removed Hyatt, and 2 doctors were immediately nearby, quickly examining her. A blond guy with a crew cut nodded approvingly as I explained what I had done. Great job, but you also did it on the go. There was no choice. True, I already did this in the Humvee. Where did you come from so quickly? When the radio said, "Fire at the police," the sheriff gave a general call. I thought it was a serious matter. Delaney at this time was already chattering next to the sheriff, animatedly telling something. As we loaded Hyatt onto the stretcher, Delaney leaned toward her. "You still owe me chocolates, and you won't get off that easy." Hyatt opened her eyes and smiled faintly. "I'll give it back. But I told you that you are cheating." Delaney grinned. "When we first moved into that shack, we didn't have electricity for 4 months. We played poker every evening." Hyatt narrowed her eyes at me weakly. "So you turned her into a card shark?" No. I just taught her math through homeschooling." Hyatt giggled quietly as she was loaded into the ambulance, and it drove away. The sheriff approached us. Delaney described everything. 2 corpses Hyatt may have suffered. He looked piercingly at me from under his furrowed eyebrows. "Or maybe you too. Everything is fine. They shot at my assistant, so they asked for it. We'll figure out the rest later. I need your weapon to conduct a ballistics test." He looked at the place engulfed in flames. "We still won't get there before the morning to get the bodies." I nodded and carefully handed him the 1911. "Will you return it? It won't float up according to ballistics as dirty, will it? Not this one. Car recycling presses are great for getting rid of evidence. Nobody wants to disassemble a 2-ton steel origami in which something may be hidden." The sheriff rolled his eyes to the sky, as if pleading for patience. "Okay, I'll return it. And it's clear that you still have about 6 more in the bottom of the barrel." I shrugged vaguely. Hell, I had a second 1911 in Sally's hidden under the trim, but I preferred not to talk about it. He leaned back. "And one more question. Where's Mookie?" Delaney shrugged. "In the trunk. What was I supposed to do with him?" The 3 of us walked around Sally's, and Delaney opened the trunk. Mookie was happily snoring there, slobbering on my upholstery. The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "Did you put it there yourself?" She grinned. "I spend half a day turning wheels and tires. So I threw in the top half and then added the rest." I examined Mookie. Just in case he should go to the hospital, let the doctors check him. Most likely, everything is fine, but he inhaled smoke and got hit in the head hard. The sheriff sighed. "I'll call an ambulance here." Delaney bit her lip as she looked at Mookie. "It's a pity to wake him up just for the sake of the ambulance." I nodded. "He looks quite peaceful. Let's take it ourselves. I want to know how Hyatt is doing." Delaney closed the trunk. I started up Sally and asked Delaney to call Sherry. She spoke in a quiet voice on the phone for a couple of minutes, then hung up. "Sherry says she'll just have time to take a shower before we pour out all the hot water. She is glad that we saved both Mookie and Hyatt, and most importantly, that this time it was clearly not our fault that everything got messed up." When we opened the trunk at the hospital, Mookie stood up and squinted. "Dude, I had such a nightmare." He pushed himself off the floor and climbed out, not at all surprised that he woke up in the trunk. These 2 in suits, they took everything out, then burned my hut and... He looked at the hospital sign, touched his swollen face, and grimaced in pain. Ooh, oh no. They really burned everything, didn't they? I spread my hands. We just managed to carry you out. It was too late for the trailer. One of them took my seeds. I'm sure there's nothing left of them. Your suits had a shootout with Deputy Hyatt at the trailer. They are both dead, and the entire area has burned down. He looked down sadly. Complete horror. Understand, I nodded. Mookie paused, looking at his feet. People shouldn't have to suffer. It's just grass, not meth. This isn't Breaking Bad, damn it. He glanced at the sign again. Is she here? Can I see her? We took him inside and almost immediately ran into the sheriff, who was waiting at the entrance to the surgery. It's good for the officials, there are flashing lights and sirens, so they were the first to arrive. He called us to him. The doctor says she will probably get better. They don't promise anything. You know how they like to hedge their bets. They say you stopped the blood loss in time, and the bullet, it seems, did not seriously hit vital areas. If everything goes well, you will be able to see her tomorrow afternoon. When we loaded her, she was still cheerful. She is stubborn and will break through. He took out a notepad. I managed to talk to her a little before they put her on painkillers. As far as I understand, they wounded her in the first shootout when she stopped the Audi. They shot through the door as soon as she tried to leave. She blocked the road and started shooting back. They rushed back to Mookie's house. Looks like it's true. And then they attacked again, and, well, they were shot. Most likely, there will be nothing left there until the morning. Everything burned to the ground. The fire won't spread any further, and our fire chief, Simmons, isn't going to take any chances with people. He turned his gaze to Mookie, who looked completely lost. And here we need to understand what the hell was going on there. I sighed. Believe it or not, it's all because of a few ounces of seeds of light illegal substances. Come on, Needles, no one kills for grass anymore. Delaney looked at Mookie, who was sitting on the floor, dumbfounded. Just tell him, Mookie. The sheriff is not bad. She grinned. And besides, all the evidence was burned. Mookie sighed heavily and completely slid down his back along the wall to the floor. The sheriff looked at me. I'll listen to him now, but later I'll look for your version. I know it's late. When your man was shot, what kind of late are we talking about? I'll warn Sherry. That's great. We left the hospital and Delaney frowned. Do you really think it was all because of the bag he had? Don't know. Of course, it sounds ridiculous, but there is logic. How much would it cost? Well, a couple of $1,000, no more. Not something to kill for. Unless... I stopped short. The thought was idiotic. Is that what? Unless someone seriously believes that the seeds of flour really cure cancer. But this is nonsense. Delaney thought. Do you remember how we returned from Texas, and at the academy the guys were tested for prohibited substances? 2 were expelled. Happens. Kurt explained why. He says it slows down reactions and clouds the brain. She shuddered. I can't even imagine what it's like to make it difficult for yourself to think and read. I realized that she was thinking about her dyslexia, which often made her feel like she was dumb, even with all our support. Although she has made great progress, reading will always remain difficult for her. Yes, this definitely won't suit you. She nodded and suddenly grinned. Well, at least you don't have to worry about my cockroaches. I think I'm already causing trouble, right? Only with your habit of dragging the sander anywhere. Delaney sighed dramatically. Oh my God, this is a problem. I put the typewriter somewhere in the wrong place. I'm used to shooting and fires and all that other crap, but when the tool is not in place, it gets to my stomach. Delaney rolled her eyes. Oh my God, the end of the world, a missing sander, I sighed. The world goes to hell when the tools are not in place. She always left the damn machine exactly a foot from the drawer where it should be, neatly cleaned and with a fresh sanding wheel. This is our little game. I pretended to swear, and she pretended to be guilty, and we both knew that everything was fine. Everything fell into place, and I saw her relax. When we arrived at the house and stopped to the right of it, Delaney looked back. Damn, it looks like the sheriff left just a couple of minutes before us. I looked in the mirror and saw a disco ball of flashing lights approaching from behind, only the colors weren't the same. Park. Take your phone and run into the forest. Call the sheriff. What? The sheriff and his guys use red, white, and blue flashers. And these are blue and white. Usually only regular police officers light up this way. Damn. And you? Go already. Delaney jumped out, walked around the house, and I opened the trunk, getting ready to grab the 1911. But the bullets were already digging into Sally's ass. The driver turned out to be Stein, with his gangster black circles under his eyes, and in the passenger seat was some big guy with a shaved head and a gray t-shirt. They both immediately got down to business. Even though Delaney ran away, I thought that I would still be in trouble now. It looks like this thug who was aiming at me was experienced, he would have had time to shoot. But then a thundering volley from a shotgun was heard from the window of the house, and for a second everything froze. The big man staggered, his chest flushed with a wave of blood. The second shot knocked him onto his back. For a moment there was complete silence, only the sound of breaking glass. Stein crouched down and quickly moved behind the car to get to me. Whatever one may say, the bastard was a professional. The loss of his partner did not bring him down. He walked around the car, grinning, and was almost in position when something screeched from around the corner and hit him in the face. It appears to have been some kind of debris or rock thrown by Delaney. He staggered, blood gushing again from his broken nose. I jumped to his partner's Kimber. Delaney screamed wildly. Bastard! Stein straightened up, furious. Little bitch. I rolled over, raised my pistol, and shot him point blank in the temple. He collapsed, and I looked down. I warned you not to call her bitch. Sherry walked out onto the porch, holding a shotgun pointed at the bodies. No one else? It seems that's it. I glanced briefly at the thug. He was definitely ready. Sherry narrowed her eyes. I was just finishing getting myself in order when I heard shooting. Honestly, I didn't think that I would have to run around in shorts with a gun now. Delaney snorted. I really wanted to ask where this outfit came from. Sherry tugged at the hem of her pink Virginia Beach for Lovers t-shirt, trying to cover up her red lace underwear. Next time, warn me in advance so that I can at least fit into my overalls, she said, deliberately dissatisfied, but she was amused by what was happening. I appreciated her appearance. Well, in my opinion, it's not bad anyway. Delaney pretended to shudder. Phew, it's clear that you liked it. I stared at Sherry, who was much calmer than I expected. Someone's coming, Delaney said, looking at the headlights. We looked at each other, and Sherry went behind Stein's car, picking up the shotgun, while I pulled a spare 1911 out of Sally's trunk, and Delaney picked up Stein's own pistol. Taking a deep breath, she looked at me questioningly, and I nodded. Stay close to Sherry. Soon the headlights came closer. It was the sheriff's SUV. He slowed down, illuminating the whole picture. Once I was sure it was him, I placed the gun on the hood of Stein's car. The sheriff, who came outside, noticed us in a beam of light from the window of the house. What do you have here, needles? Tell me. Stein. Crap. Are you safe? Everything is fine. Only my car got a hole in it. There were no others? No, just these two. He radioed about the incident and walked around the corpses, examining them. He glanced sideways at Delaney. Well, here comes Miss Mayhem with a pistol. She immediately placed Stein's gun on the hood of the Sally. I intervened before she could say anything. This is Stein's trunk. We didn't understand who was going there. It was a long evening. The sheriff nodded, assessing the situation and the bullet tracks. I never thought that you would end up in 2 shootouts in one evening on unrelated matters. He looked at the corpse of Stein's partner, then at Sherry's double-barreled gun. How are you, Sherry? She answered firmly. They attacked my man and my girlfriend. I would repeat it tomorrow or the day after tomorrow until they get tired of it. Right? We will write this down in the protocol. Stein was listed as armed and especially dangerous, so there wouldn't be a problem. The weapon will have to be taken away. I handed Kimber. I didn't shoot from mine, only from theirs. We'll check it anyway, he said with a grin. So this 1911 is clean for you. Almost unfired, I haven't fired at anyone with it yet. The sheriff grinned. With everything that's going on, I wouldn't like to leave you completely without a weapon. Maybe I could give you something to replace it. No need, I have a supply, and there will be a gun. Lord, Needles, how much of all this do you have? As much as needed. Sherry placed the shotgun on the hood of the Sally. Well, if you're looking at everything here now, then I guess I'll go get dressed. She tugged at her t-shirt. I didn't plan to let people into the next world in just their underwear. Delaney burst out laughing, and they disappeared into the house together. The sheriff shook his head. Lucky you, Needles. I wouldn't trade them for anything. I talked to Mookie. He doesn't know how to lie, so I told him frankly. These two were attached to him because of a package from his cousin. So the first incident with you and Delaney had nothing to do with it. He'll tell me the rest. And then I'll get through to interrogate you later. Although there's nothing to interrogate. 2 trips, 2 shootouts, bodies on fire, to hell with the Pinto. He sighed. You two obviously won't calm down. But since my assistant was offended, then let the lands be fed with interest. He hid the notebook and sighed. So it turns out that all that crap today was because of you on a completely different line. It has nothing to do with that previous commotion. Oh well, we'll finish the rest in the morning. That's all. We were in the wrong place at the wrong time. In the right place at the right time, otherwise I would have lost my assistant and Mookie would have been burned alive. But I still have to ask, what the hell were you doing there? We were going to thank Mookie for reporting the thug taking pictures of Delaney at the junkyard and see if he saw anything else. I don't know if this has anything to do with Stein or if he's just a random pervert. Maybe even just an amateur photographer without an ounce of common sense. The sheriff raised his hands helplessly. The way things have been going lately, I doubt it. Perhaps it was a scout for Stein. He rubbed his chin. Be careful, there may be more of them. Are you sure this is related to the attack on your ex-wife? The timing alone is enough. I thought about it. Stein's gun is similar to a Smith and Wesson M&P9. I heard that Charlotte was shot with a 9mm. Maybe we should check the ballistics of his pistol. He was damn interested in Delaney. I didn't want to reveal everything Charlotte said. I was almost sure that at the first opportunity she would try to make me feel guilty for what I had done to protect Delaney. She didn't have proof, but it would still make my life difficult. I could at least give a hint. He was very interested in who Delaney's biological father really was. No, as I understand it, not a deceased, unmourned senator. The sheriff raised an eyebrow with a sarcastic expression. Apparently not. He rubbed his chin again. The way I can imagine it is that he was an obsessive pervert who tried to kidnap a 14-year-old girl using his position. This happens, and the state will be comfortable hushing up the story if I don't sensationalize it. It could be hinted that he came across her while investigating the attack on your ex. Hell, maybe it was. And if he worked for someone else, for a different reason, then they won't understand that we reached them. Yes, this murky story with the fake warrant still bothers me. Me too. I saw a stream of lights approaching and sirens began to wail in the distance. Looks like your guys have arrived. Delaney left the house. I'll take half a sheet of plywood from the shop and cover the window until I can fix it. She headed towards a small barn. The sheriff smiled slightly, and I watched her with approval. She appointed herself the keeper of the house. She loves that someone once built it with their own hands for their family. If something needs fixing, she insists that she will do it herself, and even tries to use only hand tools. He watched as she almost dragged a sheet of plywood out of the shed. I got the impression that before you and Sherry came into her life, there wasn't much caring in her life. Charlotte treated her like she was a total failure, like she was too stupid to do anything right. completely isolated her. Yes, I caught it. Your ex seemed like a blood-curdling bitch to me. You know, if you keep a dog alone on a chain, it will start snapping at everyone who approaches. We need to reteach him that not everyone is an enemy. He looked at the approaching lights. Assistants will record your statements. He then turned to Delaney. Do you need help with this? We got up late the next morning. Yesterday, we stayed up late filling out witness statements and watching the work of criminologists. Despite my fears that Sherry had to pull the trigger on Stein's man, she slept like the dead, cuddled up to me, and with a smile on her face. Of course, she declared it a movie night, so she found herself sandwiched between me and Delaney on the couch. Maybe that helped. The next morning, Delaney and I went to the dump. The sheriff was already waiting for us. Delaney waved to him and went into the trailer to study. He handed me a cup of coffee from Quick Mart. Just a warning, the state is already trying to distance itself from the Stein investigation. His bosses don't want to deal with a possible pedophile, so they prefer to turn a blind eye to his motives and blame it all on self-defense. The second guy has no identification, nothing real at all. All documents are fakes. We're checking fingerprints. As soon as something comes up, I'll let you know. It's not suspicious at all, right? Perhaps he was a professional. He moved confidently, like a cop or a military man. He's been shot before, just unlucky this time. This happens with shotguns. He looked at me. How does Sherry deal with this? Slept like a baby. Glad to hear. He took out a notepad. By the way, about fake documents, one wallet survived the fire at Mookie's. A dental examination will have to be done to identify them, but I suspect that will yield nothing. The IDs in the wallet are high-quality fakes. Mississippi driver's license, but number doesn't exist. A couple of bank cards loaded to capacity. Nothing personal, nothing useful. The car was rented under the same fake name. The medical examiner says that the dentistry on both bodies is European. Other composites and materials for fillings, not ours. The pros went for Mookie. That's what they looked like. This doesn't make any sense, does it? Unless what he received from his cousin was very valuable to someone. Now it doesn't matter anymore, it burned in the fire. I thought about it. Let all who ask know that this is so. He nodded. Yes, I specifically indicated this in the official reports. Parcel, unopened, contents unknown, destroyed in fire. It might help. It won't hurt. No matter what Mookie thinks, it's definitely not the grass. Not with professionals. He shook his head. And so far there is nothing to indicate a connection with Gold Shield Security, but be on the lookout. We will. Take care of yourself, too. I dialed the number and waited. K2 Executive Services. How can I help? This is Lester Dawes. I need to talk to Kurt or Katie. Hold on. A minute later, another voice was heard. Needles. Kim, I tried to contact Kurt. Father is abroad, but you are on our priority list if we need help. I just need information. I'm turning on the speakerphone. Okay? As soon as Delaney heard Kim's voice, she sat up suddenly. Hi, Kimmy. Thug Bunny, how's my favorite crash test dummy doing? Missed me, huh? Let's see. The last 6-week driver's course just graduated, and altogether, they only overturned half the cars in the entire course that you did in the first week. Underpants. Not an iota of courage. Delaney's grin grew even wider, and she sang the last phrase. That's about what my father said. He said you have a standing job offer as soon as you turn 21. Delaney grinned even wider, almost maniacally. Just think how much paperwork awaits you, and the insurance will skyrocket. Kim chuckled and thought for a second. Mackenzie asked if there was a chance of holding another summer camp next year. The parents thought it would be fun. Driving, but also something else. Maybe for 4 weeks, if you're interested. Delaney froze as if she had been electrocuted and stared at me, nodding furiously and looking pleadingly. I looked at Sherry and saw her approving smile. Delaney nodded, and she squealed loudly. Hell yes, Kim laughed. That's what I thought. I'll tell you when and what to take with you. After a few more minutes of chatting, Kim finally asked why I called her. Information about a company called Gold Shield Security. We crossed paths with one of their guys. Did you cross paths? That bastard was following Delaney. Did you catch him? No, the cops caught it, but I had to let go. She fell silent and I heard the keys clatter. A small company, not of our level, usually engaged in the protection of VIPs, rappers, and celebrities. Typical bigger is better style of security, big guys, but no real skills. Rumor has it that they provide additional services. They break bones and sometimes kill. Some of them were involved in a series of shootings during the East Coast-West Coast rap feud. The matter did not come to charges. Let me look at their contracts. After a minute, she began rattling off a list of clients, mostly minor celebrities with a modicum of talent or leaked sex tapes, until I got to one name. Stop. Go back one. Jason Bradley Calloway, Esquire extreme athlete. High-altitude mountain boarding, rallying, base jumping, motocross, ice climbing. Last time I checked, he was a lawyer. She tapped the keys again. This too, but apparently he's not really involved in it. He is a rising star in extreme sports. Not a bad job if you're lucky. Do you know where he lives? Kim was silent for a second. Listen, I will send you a standard target package for him. For free. If he's following Delaney, he has a reason, and most likely not the best one. Sherry raised an eyebrow and silently asked, "Target package?" I will. Using the standard protocol, send me a letter with your PGP key. I was about to ask what the hell she was talking about when Delaney interrupted me. Can I use the mail and key that we created in the summer camp? I only use them for letters to Tess and Mac. Kim thought about it. Yes, I still have it. Good idea. I will send a test letter and the package itself in a day or two. Delaney sat up smugly. Do you see? I studied. I wish our paying students would try at least half as hard as you. Kim sounded sincere. Delaney suddenly blushed, and Sherry looked at her with pride. Sent. Sherry helped Delaney log into the computer. After the events with NCWB, Delaney became overly cautious. She did not sit down at the computer without us, afraid of falling into a trap again. I opened the mail. I received it. We ended the conversation, and I looked at the letter. Do you have encrypted mail? Delaney shrugged. Katie made us do it. She said that this makes it more difficult for the cyberstalker to reach us. She said that girls our age need to be careful. She looked at the ceiling, as if I didn't know that. In addition, secure communication is always important. Sherry raised her eyebrow again. It was clear that I needed to tell her more about Kurt and Katie's affairs. Delaney could not calm down before going to bed for a long time. She was too excited about the prospect of a new summer camp. When she finally fell asleep, Sherry and I sat on the couch and just watched the fire. I knew the question would come. So, Kurt and Katie's school. She just left the sentence hanging in the air. This is really a school for bodyguards. Protection of VIPs. High level of training. They also work under private military contracts. Security services, armed groups. Sherry looked at me suspiciously. These are mercenaries. Mercenaries are prohibited. The UN actually banned them in the late 80s. So what's the difference? In the title, mostly. Theoretically, there are still differences, but they are not very clear. Kurt and Katie are primarily involved in teaching. Mostly. The time they asked me for help, they seemed to be acting within the law. Seems I didn't ask too many questions. Sherry looked at me thoughtfully, then changed the subject. Did Delaney really flip over cars there? This is normal for a good extreme driving course. The only way to know the limits is to roll over a couple of times. This is the only way to truly experience it. I could see that she was trying not to worry. Kurt and Katie are professionals. Everything was there with seat belts, a crew, and equipment in case of an emergency. She was probably safer than on a roller coaster. This was probably an exaggeration, but there is rarely a rescue team on duty on slides. Sherry paused. That's why they always need new cars, right? Yes. The course is designed to make them break. If they don't roll over, it means they're not trying. And Delaney turned over a lot of them. She's generally fearless, right? Too fearless. Sherry smiled softly at me. That's why you did it. So she knows when to slow down. I nodded. Everyone has a limit. Physics doesn't care whether you're afraid or not. I hope she understands that this isn't just about cars. Besides, I fell silent, searching for the right words. Sherry beat me to it. Does she attract trouble? I think Delaney could sit on the couch, eat cookies, and watch TV in her pajamas and still end up in a firefight. That's what you think, right? Looks like it. I know it's not her fault. This is all Charlotte's fault, but Delaney is up to her neck in this, and we don't even know how deep it goes. Sherry thought for a moment. Why do you think they would actually hold this summer camp again? I think this is an investment for Katie. Kurt probably just gets a kick out of it, while Katie is always looking to the future. If you do this every year, girls will develop reflexes at a young age. Competent female bodyguards are always in demand for high-level jobs. Many principled women feel uncomfortable with male bodyguards in certain situations. Even if they could recruit just one of the girls by the time she turned 21, the investment would be recouped in a year or two. This is. Her voice trailed off. Mercenary, in a sense, yes. But I think they got really attached to the girls, so it's not just about the money. And if she doesn't want to work for them, she won't have to. Sherry sighed. It sounds crazy, but it's Delaney. Suddenly she giggled. We could go on vacation again. Rent a bungalow with a private beach, and I'll buy a tiny bikini again, which will remain in my suitcase, like last time, maybe. Are you seriously trying to bribe me with the promise of sex so that I agree to let her go? Sherry smiled at me. Do you want to get in advance? Sherry was studying the target dossier that Kim gave us. It only took Kim 2 days. He has an apartment in Georgetown, but he's building a mansion in the mountains of West Virginia, not far from the border, near that place, Hardscrabble. Bought almost 10,000 acres for myself. Almost 2 mountains and a valley between them. In an interview, he said that he uses mountain roads to test his cars and motorcycles. An asshole with a lot of money and too much free time. Most likely, everything is even worse. One of the mountains on which it is built. Sherry scrolled further and opened a newspaper clipping. There was a man who refused to sell his land. He lived there for almost 40 years, and then on a clear sunny day, he somehow flew off the road and down the mountain slope. A sociopathic asshole with a lot of money and too much free time? Sherry nodded slowly. She has a whole list of coincidences with deaths. People he had conflicts with, several women who sued him to establish paternity. She looked at me. Looks like Charlotte. One case was ruled a suicide, the other an accidental overdose. Looks like we found our guy. She pulled up a map that appeared to be a satellite image, maybe from Google, but maybe, given Kim, not. This is where he builds his house. To get there, you have to drive along this long mountain road. She ran her finger along the way up. Everything further is his territory. He put up a gate so no one could get through. Does he live there? Not yet. But Kim included a screenshot of a Facebook post saying he was there on Saturdays with the boys to race on the mountain roads. The circle is about 7 miles. She brought up a photo on the screen, and we looked at it. The great and terrible Jason Bradley Calloway-esque and half a dozen big guys in black t-shirts. This must be his security. Most likely, more for show. If Kim is right about the gold shield, they are far from just for show. Her voice was serious. You need to be careful. I looked at Delaney. Caution is our middle name, right? She just rolled her eyes and snorted. I worked alone for 2 weeks. Unlike the guy in the Jeep, I had training for this shit and had at least a half-dozen semi-defective cars from our yard at my disposal. On weekdays, the road was busy with workers and equipment scurrying back and forth, but on Saturdays, only Calloway and his guards came there. Sometimes they brought in some cargo, but that was all. Whatever car he brought, it roared on the road all day, rushing at breakneck speeds. He seems to be a true adrenaline junkie. Driving on these roads at these speeds is almost suicidal. Admittedly, he might have turned out to be almost as good as he thought. By the end of the second week, I had a plan, and Delaney made it even better. Get the keys to the tow truck. Delaney's eyes lit up. The tow truck was one of her favorite cars, a black Ford F550 with a Vulcan 812 Intruder Roman II recovery rig, typically used in deader work. I haven't done this, but this truck was perfect for getting cars out of the toughest places. The jaws on the boom could get into gaps that seemed impossible, and once the jaws clamped down on the wheels, you could simply lift the car up and pull it out. I bought it from Emmett Tuckett when he retired. Emmett Tuckett was a chain-smoking, cigar-smoking repo agent who drank to the extreme. He purchased the best equipment and had many encounters, taking vehicles all over the state. He was shot, stabbed, run over 8 times, damn it, and were bitten by dogs, from pit bulls to Rottweilers. He finally retired and sold me a tow truck after he had a particularly bad day. I still didn't understand what exactly happened then. He didn't say, but in the end, 2 dealers were dead, 4 houses burned to the ground, and a perfectly preserved 1969 Jaguar XKE with 20 kilograms of heroin in the trunk ended up at the bottom of the swimming pool. Emmett was left with 2 bullets in his chest, a piece of a kitchen knife in his shoulder blade, a broken leg after being run over by an orange 1974 Volkswagen Thing, and a sore bite from his Pomeranian. He agreed to a ridiculous price for a tow truck and moved to Florida to babysit his grandchildren. He took his new girlfriend with him, a woman named Amelie, who was as silent about their acquaintance as he was, and their Pomeranian named Skittles. Slowly, pull it forward a little more. Delaney followed the instructions carefully, moving the tow truck forward a little until I signaled for her to stop. She leaned out of the window, looking worriedly at our work. "Do we have enough space to go around?" "Yes, a couple of feet to spare." I unhooked the canvas straps, threw them on the back of my Ford F550, then climbed into the cabin. Delaney took her seat again, put the car in gear, and led us up the mountain road. She looked down, out the window, at the mountainside. "From here you can see almost infinity." Maybe that's the problem. People like him get used to living on top of a mountain. They begin to consider everyone else inferior to themselves. She nodded and sat silently until we reached the security gate. The tow truck opened them with its nose without difficulty and surprisingly silently. Unlike the gate at the foot of the mountain, this one was unlocked. I closed the first ones with a chain so that random onlookers would not poke their heads in at the wrong time. A long circular road passed right in front of a massive construction site that was clearly going to be a huge mansion. Unfinished fountains, stone paths, and other, less recognizable structures are scattered everywhere. 6 men were sitting at a stone table, drinking and eating something. They watched us with indifference and perhaps a touch of contempt. They are probably used to the fact that work cars or delivery trucks periodically come here. I was pretty sure Jason Calloway had never seen a tow truck before, and judging by the lack of reaction, none of his goons were particularly interested in us. Sometimes you get exactly what you pay for. "Wow," Delaney said, looking around. "Does he imagine himself to be Louis XIV? Are you really teaching this? There is a series about this." Her gaze darted around the area until it finally settled on a blue car that looked like a spaceship parked right in the center of the yard. "Ooh, this looks like it will break at just one glance." "Yeah, isn't it?" Her smile mirrored my own as I backed the tow truck toward the car and swung the door open. "Stay inside until I tell you to. Seriously, if he sees you, he will understand immediately." I jumped to the ground and walked around the hypercar, carefully inspecting it until one of the men jumped up to me. "Get the fuck away from the car, asshole. Leave what you brought and get out." "Hey, I'm just doing my job. I have orders from the owner, a certain Mr. Calloway, to take this thing away. I don't want to damage her." He stared at me, then darted back to the group and started talking to a tall blonde guy who was clearly trying to look cool. A couple of seconds later, Jason Calloway himself arrogantly walked towards me, glaring at me. Hey, moron, I didn't tell anyone to take my car. Wait, I have a signed warrant here. I put my hand inside my jacket and pulled it out 1911 and pointed it at his head. Tell your friend to gather the rest of the gold shield and rush towards the damn far edge of your palace, or I'll start making fist-sized holes in you. Let's. 3, 2. He hesitated, but then nodded to his man, and we watched as they ran away in panic. What the hell are you doing? I'm just providing insurance so I can talk calmly. You should hire more competent security guards. I waved my hand, and Delaney pulled the tow truck close to the rear bumper of the car, sliding the grip into place. Calloway winced at the sound of the locking jaws clicking. I'll fucking destroy you. Do you even understand? Shut up. We haven't even started yet. You will do what is necessary, and we will hardly damage your toy. He looked at me in bewilderment as the car slowly lifted. What do you want? Nothing. I'm just a tow truck driver. But there is a person who wants to chat with you. I signaled for Delaney to come out. He froze. Obviously, he immediately knew who she was, but seemed to hope that we were just a figment of his imagination. Delaney, meet me. This is Jason Bradley Calloway, Esquire. Delaney, deliberately ignoring him, glanced at me. What does Esquire even mean? I shrugged. Remind me, we'll see later. I think it's something in Latin or Greek that means asshole. All the Esquires I've met have been like this. Or lawyers, which is almost the same thing. He started to say something, but Delaney interrupted him. Logical. Is this what I'm thinking? Bugatti Chiron. It costs something like $2 or $3 million. Accelerates to 260 miles per hour. It looks like a spaceship from some cheap sci-fi TV series. Damn, I thought he was cool until you said that. Now I want to write on the side, Mars needs women. She nodded. He's clearly compensating for something. A 3,260-mile supercar. It's probably actually microscopic. I looked at Calloway. This makes sense. Delaney walked slowly around the car, tapping it with a screwdriver. Every sound made Calloway twitch. What is this made of? Carbon. It is difficult to damage. It has an incredible stiffness coefficient. Do you see? Compensation. She grinned at her Shrek impersonation, then walked to the back of the truck, grabbed the safety chain, and pulled it under the car. What the hell are you doing? It's a strange coincidence, but we have the same question for you. Why are your guards trying to kill Delaney? He hesitated, torn between denial and rage, but pride won. I won't let some stupid mistake claim the family money. They are mine, and I intend to keep them. She is a mistake. I'm not going to deal with these damn paternity suits. I don't need your fucking money, you bastard. Delaney winced as she lay halfway under the back of the car. There was a sharp metallic sound as she caught the hook on something with a crash. Calloway winced again. She slid out from under the car and stood up, grabbing the outside control panel for the lift. I don't want anything to do with you or your money. You are nothing to me. Needles is my father. She looked at me softly for a moment and then glared at him again and pressed the lift button, raising the back of the car higher and higher until a strange grinding sound came from the front as the spoiler caught on the gravel. Jerk. Calloway flinched at the sound, but was smart enough to stay where he was, given the gun in my hand. I waved him back. Listen carefully, fucking schedule. We'll take your damn rocket to the gate, and you'll stand still while we do it. If you move, she will follow the tow truck, like wedding cans on a rope. Maybe you didn't notice, but she only attached a safety chain, but didn't put any straps on the wheels, so it will dangle like a beer can. Delaney glanced around the car. Actually, dragging her backwards is not a good idea. It's bad for her, right? It's four-wheel drive. You can't tow it properly without a platform. If anything breaks, let that asshole pay from his trust fund or wherever he got the money. Calloway looked like he wanted to say something, but I waved my hand again. Shut up. Stein is dead, so don't expect any more help from him. And don't try to attack Charlotte again. I don't need any extra problems if everyone decides that I screwed her up. Delaney tilted her head and looked at me. Well, to be honest, you deserve that reputation. Then she turned her gaze to Calloway. If I were you, I would suspect him first. He clearly has anger issues when it comes to her. I sighed. Okay, I won't argue. But if I didn't pull the trigger, then I don't want to take responsibility. Calloway looked from me to her, clearly not understanding anything, but I had no time for explanations. Delaney jumped into the cabin with one last angry look. I looked at him. This is the only warning. Leave us alone. If you try to get us, even now, even in 10 years, you're dead. If you try to chase us down this fucking serpentine road before I call you, you'll die. Clear? He barely nodded, but his eyes flashed with hatred. I clenched my teeth. The only reason I'm warning you is because I'm trying to set a good example for the kid. Delaney leaned out of the window, rolled her eyes, and snorted with laughter. Calloway's face turned red with rage. Well, damn. I tried. As we started to move, I heard the locked wheels of his car bouncing on the asphalt. He moved forward, but I sharply pressed the gas, jerking his precious car, and Delaney, leaning out of the window, showed him the middle finger. He froze in place, watching as we reached the gate. Delaney jumped out, quickly unhooked the chain, and jumped back into the cab. She looked at me. Done. Are you ready for this? She nodded. I know people like him. They constantly hung around their mother and Chuck. They believe that they are the only ones who matter. It's either him or me. I pressed the gas pedal and hit the emergency release clamps. The 2-ton supercar crashed onto the road. I saw Calloway and his henchmen rush towards the black SUV at the end of the complex, while I quickly changed gears. We urgently needed to get to the goal before they caught up with us. More time passed than I expected, and I was beginning to wonder if we had miscalculated when I heard the growling roar of a supercar. He waited to get behind the wheel and take the lead. He must have been using the lunch system, not the best choice for a winding mountain road, but considering how we humiliated him in front of his own hired sycophants, he must have been furious. He had enough straight sections before us, and his car's handling was top-notch even at high speeds. I didn't know what he was going to do when he caught up with us. His 2-ton supercar was unlikely to throw a tow truck off the road, but suddenly he had a plan, and I wasn't going to find out what it was. I started to take the turn, avoiding the boulder we had pulled onto the road, and reached for the big yellow button with a smiling face on the dashboard. Emmett Tuckett was more than just a car repossession specialist. He was an ardent hater of what he called hippies and greenies. He modified his truck to emit clouds of black smoke when he passed Priuses or other cars he deemed worthy of contempt. I never got around to removing this feature even though it was illegal. Delaney's hand pressed down hard on the button before I could press it. I looked at her. Her face was hard, her jaw was clenched, her fingers were white with tension. Fuck him. Thick black smoke poured out of the chimneys, covering the road behind us. The roar of the Bugatti grew louder. Delaney looked forward and moved her lips, counting to herself. 3-2. The crash behind us was strange, incredibly loud, but without the metallic clanging sound of normal crashes. The Chiron flew past us, tumbling through the air like a giant blue frisbee. We both watched in silence as he flew over the valley. Delaney blinked. Wow, it's holding up better than I thought. I slowed down, watching the car fall down. 800 feet to the rocky valley floor. Yeah, well, it can obviously be polished, yes. Delaney blinked again and looked at her side of the mirror. Do you think his bodyguards will notice? Her sentence was cut short by the roar of the second blow. The black SUV, much slower and much less aerodynamic, tumbled down the mountainside, breaking into pieces like one of those strange self-destructing sculptures. No. We drove for another 30 minutes, while Delaney just stared straight ahead. Are you okay? She nodded once, taking a deep breath. Him or me. I was lucky, very lucky. You were there for me, but one day I will have to be alone. She choked slightly, and I saw her eyes fill with tears, but she suppressed it. I could pretend, but I think, maybe this is just my life. Delaney forced a weak smile. You know this, don't you? That's why you sent me to Texas. There was no point in lying. I think it will be like this for some time. She nodded. Yes, I saw his face when you told him to stop trying to kill his mother. He didn't understand anything at all, and he didn't know what I was talking about when I mentioned Stein. Delaney let out a long sigh. Crap. Sherry sighed when we finished the story. So, is there something else? I nodded. I'm pretty sure Junior wasn't involved in the attack on Charlotte. Tara leaned back. I asked Delaney to call her and meet us at the cabin. She looked thoughtful. Burns loves men, so he is above suspicion. Franks has been the subject of 12 paternity suits over the past 18 years. One of them is coming right now. He would even sleep with a crocodile if it lay still enough. I rolled my eyes. Yes, he slept with Charlie. A crocodile would be a step up. Tara tried to give me a sour look, but by now she was used to my attitude towards Charlotte. As are you. Delaney giggled. Behave yourself, Les. Sherry looked at me with feigned severity, but spoiled the effect with a slight smile. I have corrected myself. Traded for a much better version. Delaney nodded in agreement, and even Tara shrugged. Sherry's smile widened. Tara shook her head with slight amusement and continued. Anyway, this isn't news to Franks. He'll just add it to the list. He most likely just paid because he thought it was unprofitable to argue. Whatever you think about Charlotte, she thought of everything and set the amount so low that it's easier to pay than to argue. I think we now know why Calloway was after Delaney, but honestly, it's just pennies to these people. This is not Sharpton, Sherry leaned forward. He's on the same high-end health insurance plan as everyone else in the firm. And what does this mean? Tara asked exactly what I was thinking. I asked my friends. A lot of my best friends are nurses, she said warmly. Sharpton had a vasectomy after the birth of his fourth son, and that was a long time ago. Tara flipped through the stack of documents and pulled out one sheet. It's good to see that everyone is strictly following the medical confidentiality law. But apparently that's why he never paid. He knew Delaney couldn't be his. So that's all. Calloway, Franks, and Sharpton. I tried to hide my irritation. Tara nodded, looking through the papers. There were quite a few others, but none had enough influence over the judge. Except, Sherry looked up. There's another Calloway. Why would he even interfere? He cannot be her father. Even Charlotte herself said so. She didn't even ask him for money. Don't know. But he's the only one left, right? Delaney huffed in irritation. Why is anyone doing this? Nobody really knows anything. Junior only tried to kill me because there was a chance that I would get some of his money. But he himself didn't really know anything. You said that Calloway Jr. owned this whole mountain and valley. Do you think anyone knows about the crash? Sherry asked thoughtfully, looking out the window. We can check. And what? Because Delaney is right. Nobody really doesn't know. I think it's time to fix this. Here, it's all in a hurry, but definitely, Sherry said, taking the package from Jasmine, then handing it to Tara without taking her eyes off her friend. I am in your debt. The serious-looking nurse shook her head. We both know who owes who, Sherry. I can never truly repay you. Sherry looked down at the table. You don't owe me anything, Sarah. I just tried to do the right thing. There was a silent exchange of glances between them, something dark and heavy. Delaney caught it and looked at me. I shook my head. Sherry and I didn't keep secrets from each other, but obviously it wasn't just her secret. I knew she would tell me if it was important. Tara completely ignored the scene as she studied the papers. Probably, lawyers are very good at not noticing unnecessary things. You don't use this in court, but we don't need it. I'm going to Tiffany's, and my mother and I will have a serious conversation. She's staying with Tiffany until she can walk on her own. This probably won't last long. Tiffany is clearly not happy with her. Can you give me a day or two? Junior is dead. Stein and his people are dead. We most likely have a few days. I added an inch of armor plate to the tow truck doors, seat backs, and floor in case anyone decided to get creative. We found what we needed when we examined the accident site. There were no witnesses or police there, so we just cleared away the wreckage. Chiron had withstood much more than one might have expected, at least his frame had, but Calloway had withstood much less. I understood his plan. He wanted to stop us. He had a brand new, shiny Steyr AUG, a submachine gun with 2 full magazines of M995 ammunition with armor-piercing black tips. He wasn't going to push us off the road. He was just going to fill us with lead. There were more similar ones in the broken SUV AUG. All new and, as I suspected, all bought with the intention of killing Delaney. We quietly left the crash site. It was completely hidden from the road, so we had time. We exited the brass antique elevator and simply walked past an extremely businesslike-looking secretary into an absurdly expensive office. Ignoring her protests, we walked inside and she followed us, telling us off as professionally as possible. The room was huge. Along the walls, there were bookcases filled to overflowing with volumes of laws bound in leather. In the center stood a massive teak table. The man behind the desk waved away the almost panicked secretary. "It's okay, Maureen. I was waiting for them. Close the door and make sure we are not disturbed." The old man looked at me with dark humor. "Good afternoon, Mr. Dawes. I warned Mr. Stein and his partner not to underestimate you. But of course they didn't understand. They've watched too many movies. They think that special forces are only about physical strength." I nodded. I remember there really was a lot of physical training. But that's not the main thing, right? Will, of course, is important, but intelligence and the ability to adapt play a decisive role in selection. Delaney crossed her arms, raising her eyebrows impatiently. "Why the hell are you trying to kill me?" He looked at her with obvious disapproval. Apparently, attempted murder did not justify rudeness and bad manners. "Darwin, Miss Dawes. Darwin, I think Mr. Dawes understands that this is natural selection. Survival of the fittest. I can't let you drag my son down with a dramatic paternity lawsuit, regardless of whether he is your unintentional parent or not. He's smart, he's strong, and I intend to take him to the top. And you are simply unworthy of my name. I never needed your name, bastard. I didn't need anything from you at all. I hadn't even heard of you until now. It doesn't matter, Miss Dawes." There was a potential threat. This would be fodder for the tabloids. It would make a mockery of everything I've built and everything I've planned for Jason. I saw the corner of Delaney's lips twitch upward. I chuckled and Delaney shook her head, trying not to laugh. So it was all in vain. The old man looked at us in confusion until I pulled a stack of papers from my back pocket and threw them in front of him. "What is this?" "DNA test. Now such kits are sold in any pharmacy, but we had to do this a little, less traditional way. I had to scrape bits of Jason Bradley Calloway off the remains of his car." And Delaney rolled her eyes. "Lord, even I can understand this test. It says here that I am not related to Junior, and therefore not related to you." She shrugged her shoulders. "God bless, it would be terrible." Suddenly she froze. "It's like in that film about a bird. A film about a bird?" I didn't have the slightest idea what she was talking about. "Well, yes," she nodded. "There was also a man in a raincoat, a creepy man, and that old fat man. The Maltese Falcon." She narrowed her eyes thoughtfully. "Yes, it seems so. I'm like this figurine that everyone was hunting for. So much happened, people died, and no one even bothered to check whether she was real or not." The old man irritably took the papers and began to study them. "If this is true, then I no longer care about you." He leaned back in his chair, clearly deciding that this was all over. I looked at Delaney. "Do you think it's worth telling him?" "Oh, I want to look at his face." I turned to the old man. "You haven't heard from your son for the last few days, have you?" This is not uncommon. He is on his own, often travels, participates in races and other sporting events. Junior will no longer continue your dynasty and nothing else either. He appears to have had a fatal accident. He tensed up sharply, his face darkened, but I interrupted him before he could speak. It sounds like he wasn't worried about your legacy, but about whether Delaney would get any money. Delaney realized it was either him or her. It didn't end well for him. Darwin, do you understand? Survival of the fittest. He studied Delaney, and from her proudly bitter expression, he realized that I had told the truth. The shock made Calloway pale, but he was a tough old man and quickly pulled himself together. This can be easily challenged in court. I laughed. Maybe. I'm not a fucking lawyer, so I'll take your word for it. But the matter is not in court. It's a matter of public opinion. You will become the star of the evening shows. Your company, your name are just vulgar jokes. A pathetic, dirty joke. He looked at me intently. He knew that I had found his weak spot. This is insurance. If something happens to any of us, or to those who helped us, this information will spread across thousands of news publications. You can't suppress everything. I grinned. So I advise you to spend money on finding Junior's real illegitimate children, if he has any. This bastard would even have sex with a snake if it had low enough standards, so there's a good chance there are little Calloways crawling around somewhere. This seemed to interest him. I was sure that the search for an heir seemed to him a much more attractive prospect than sticking his hand into a badger hole again. As we headed out, I hoped that Jason Bradley Calloway, the lawyer, had left no offspring behind. Delaney looked at her feet as we walked towards Sally. She was clearly not in a good mood, so I lightly nudged her with my elbow. So, you are our Maltese falcon. The corner of her lips twitched into a smile. Yes, it seems so. We should rewatch it, it's movie night. Do you know what this means? She looked up at me questioningly. What? That you're made of the stuff dreams are made of, baby. My terrible Bogart accent didn't bother her, she just grinned. But she never shook off the blues. What's wrong with me anyway? Everyone is just trying to kill me. The question is, what's wrong with me? Why? Because I'm the only father who hasn't tried to kill you yet. Bye. Bye. Keep leaving the belt sander on the workbench instead of putting it away, bandit. Let's see what happens. 3 weeks later. The sheriff was sitting on the steps of the office when we arrived. You guys suddenly seemed suspiciously relaxed. By a strange coincidence, a message came that somewhere in West Virginia, a car containing Gold Shield security and their employer had somehow fallen off a cliff. Looks like this happened a few weeks ago. Good news. Apparently, I should have been more careful. He nodded. Were they friends of Stein? Actually, no. Everyone was minding their own business. He sighed. God, you're just a magnet for trouble. Delaney looked outraged. This whole story with Mookie had nothing to do with us. She opened the right toolbox on the tow truck and began taking tools out of it. And yet you managed to get yourself into this again. By the way, about visits. We had 2 of the corporate security here. The pressure from the State Department was such that we had to give them everything they wanted. Large European pharmaceutical company. Hackman, looks like it. Germans, it seems. Not to say that they are friendly. They were not at all worried about the 2 dead, but they really wanted to inspect the car. It wouldn't help them. No, but I told them that on one of the bodies they found the remains of a bag melted right into the clothes. These guards didn't seem too upset when I explained that the test showed the presence of illegal substances. He sighed heavily as he stood up. There's not a damn bit of logic in all of this. 2 dead, Hyatt is now on 6 months sick leave. And all this because of prohibited substances. I shrugged. I don't think it makes sense either. The sheriff headed to his Tahoe. I'll return your weapon to you in a couple of days. He froze for a second and looked at us. In the medical examiner's report on the dead, some wording can be misunderstood. If you don't read it carefully, it might seem like Hyatt installed them herself. I wouldn't want these pharmaceutical guys to start taking an interest in you. Our morgue is not rubber. Thank you. Hyatt deserves an award. She chased after them, even after they crashed into her, and still tried to stop them. He nodded. I had a similar thought. Got into the car. You 2 stay out of trouble. Delaney watched him go, then put the last knob into the drawer and looked inside with disgust. Ugh, dried mouse poop. Serves you right. You left the tacos there, so take them away. BRR. Delaney wrinkled her nose and picked up the broom. Oh, look. I looked over her shoulder, and we looked at the box in silence for a few seconds. You know, but today is Tuesday. She raised her head and grinned. 12 great tacos. Mookie looked up from the cash register as we entered. He suddenly turned pale and tensed. Welcome to Taco Grand. How can I help? I looked at him carefully. His hair was now cut almost like a clipper, and half of his face was still covered with yellow, slowly healing bruises. His jaw twitched. I nodded. We have one large set of tacos and 2 large Cokes. Yes, sir. He carefully punched the order, then said, That's $11.92. I pulled out $12 and watched as he carefully counted out the change and handed me the check. With the same care, as if his whole body ached, he turned around, counted 12 tacos, and put them in a bag, then pushed it towards us along with 2 glasses. Is that correct, sir? I looked at Delaney, then back at Mookie. No, one more thing. Delaney placed an envelope in front of him. That's all we could find. It spilled into the box when the mice chewed through it. He stared at the envelope in amazement. I echoed Delaney's thought. There's only half an ounce of seeds. You won't get rich from this, but at least it's something. His lower lip trembled. They burned my house. All. You saw it. Delaney elbowed me. I sighed. I have a used trailer. On Saturday, I'll take it to where your old one was. I have no money. I picked up the change in my hand. What does this look like? He just looked at me in amazement. Maybe this is all nonsense, and there is no cure for cancer in this. Maybe it's no different from all the other crap people smoke. But someone was willing to kill for it, so just in case, I'd prefer someone other than Hackman Pharmaceuticals to do it too. Just give away some of the seeds and let them disperse. He nodded slowly, doubtfully, as we took the bag and headed for the exit. Delaney looked at him through the glass. Do you think he'll do something about it? I think yes. He is perhaps the best candidate. He doesn't need wealth or power. He just wants to grow good grass. He will raise it and give it away. Anyone else would have tried to sell it to a big corporation. She grimaced. It's hard to imagine him in the role of a hero. I grinned. Imagine his statue in front of the CDC building. Mookie, hero, and healer. I hope the statue will have his Taco Grand hat on it. It's not an option at all without her. Delaney snorted. $1 in a piggy bank. Crap. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even click to the next one.